And now we begin the muscular system. Hopefully you'll notice a very old school photograph of the former governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I couldn't find a more appropriate muscle photo to start our discussion on the muscular system. Just a couple of notes. You probably noticed through the integumentary and the skeletal system that there's lots of new and different terminology. The first exam was somewhat comfortable for us because it included so much of a review of other biology courses you may have taken in the past. However, the integumentary system, the skeletal system, all new terminology, really, really weird, strange words that you've never heard of. Well, now we're in the muscle system, we're going to take it up another notch and not just have a lot of words that are weird and different to us, but we also are going to have concepts that we have to overlay over the terminology that we're learning. So off we go. First are our functions of muscles. They allow for gross body movements. And again, by gross, we don't mean, oh, that's disgusting. We mean large body movements, moving your arms, moving your legs, walking, sitting, lying down, things like that. Stabilization of body position. I once saw a time-lapse film of someone who was told to stand vertically and still and not move at all. And the person believed that they were fulfilling that they were just standing there just straight and stiff and hadn't moved. But when you look at it through time-lapse photography, it looked like they were caught in a windstorm, that their body was herky and jerky and moving all over the place. Very subtle movements, but moving. That's what we mean by body stabilization, that your body is kept in the correct position that you choose to put it in, but your body makes these micro corrections that you don't even realize are happening. Movement of materials through the body. We have to remember there are three types of muscles, right? We have skeletal, which is going to allow for stabilization of body position and gross body movements, but we also have cardiac and smooth. Cardiac and smooth are going to have a huge play in moving materials through the body, and skeletal muscles actually do play a role to a lesser degree in moving materials through your body, specifically the blood. Also help with temperature regulation. Muscular activity produces about 85% of heat production in your body. That's why when you go for a run and as your body cools down, when you first finish your run, you're really hot and sweaty, but the longer you sit, the longer you kind of cool down, you get much more chilly. My father would enjoy reading the newspaper every day, sitting in his chair, and when he would get a chill, he would just get up and spontaneously just march around the house or do some dishes or do a physical activity because he knew that that muscular motion would help warm him up. So what are the characteristics of muscles? They've got several characteristics that kind of differentiate them from other tissues in your body. First, they are excitable. What we mean by this isn't like, oh, they get all excited. It means simply that they respond to stimuli, that there is a signal that's going to come to them and cause them to react, cause them to respond in some way. Conductivity, it's going to allow a nerve impulse to move into the muscle. This is typically the stimulus that we're interested in for our muscle to respond to. Right? So this nerve impulse is going to come to our muscle and it's going to cause the muscle to respond to it. Contractility, when something contracts, it gets smaller, it gets shorter. So this contractility, the ability for a muscle to contract, causes it to shorten, which is going to produce movement in your body. If you envision your bicep, it's going to be your biceps brachii. It's going to be attached to the head of your humerus. It's going to be attached to the proximal ends of your radius and ulna. When the biceps brachii contracts, when it shortens, that shortening pulls the radius and ulna, causing movement in the arm. These muscles need to also be extensible. We also have to be able to reverse that. If we contract it, we also have to be able to lengthen it, bring it back to its normal or original position. Because if not, you would get one biceps brachii contraction and then you would walk around with your elbows bent for the rest of your life, and that's clearly not what happens. Elasticity is a muscle's ability to return to its original shape. Again, think about the elastic in your underwear. You stretch it and you let it go and it goes back to its original shape and size. That's one of our characteristics that we see in skeletal muscles, in all of our muscles, pardon me. Now, remember from lab, we just mentioned there are 3 types of muscles. If you would picture in your mind's eye, or even get out your textbook, get out your notes, and get a picture. I'm going to have photographs for you, but just so that you're remembering what each of these types of muscles look like. First, we'll talk about skeletal muscle. Each of those horizontal bands in the top photograph represent a single muscle cell, a single skeletal muscle cell. If you'll remember, they are multinucleated. They have many nuclei, and they are striped. They are striated. They've got those bands that we see. In the lower photograph, we're looking at those same fibers or cells cut in cross section. They would be kind of coming out of the screen at you. The reason I like this photograph is it's showing you the many blood vessels, those darker kind of circular oval shaped guys. Those are the blood vessels. Now, skeletal muscles are associated with the skeletal system, in skin. They are striated, as we said, which means they're striped. They have those bands. And as we'll soon learn, it's those striations that allow skeletal muscles to contract the way that they do. We say that skeletal muscles are under voluntary control. That means you have the ability to control them. They will contract spontaneously. They will contract on their own, especially with that monitoring of body position we talked about. You don't have to think, okay, I'm going to bend my leg, so I have to have these specific muscles contract now. That's not what we're talking about. What we mean is you do have the ability to make a conscious decision to make a specific movement. Not every movement has to have a conscious decision or you thinking about doing it. Right? That's what we mean by voluntary control. You can make it happen or not make it happen. Our other 2 types of muscles you do not have voluntary control over. All right, next you'll notice from this photograph that these cells are also striated. But instead of being individual tubes or worms, they are branched. This is a photomicrograph of cardiac muscle cells. We find cardiac muscle that making up the myocardium or the muscle of the heart wall. What makes up the heart itself is the myocardium, which is composed of cardiac muscle cells. The rate of contraction for these cells can be altered by neural and hormonal control. As we'll talk in 132, these cells have the ability to contract on their own, but they are also, that rate is changed depending on neural and hormonal control, right? Your heart can beat faster if you're going for a run. Your heart can beat faster if certain hormones, stress hormones, are secreted into your body and you're nervous about something, right? So your body does have the ability to alter that kind of base level of contraction. Next, we have smooth muscle. They're called smooth muscle because they are not striated. You see, they just kind of look smooth. The top photograph is what we would refer to as a sheet of smooth muscle. The lower you'll see is a blood vessel coming out of the screen at you. There's blood contained within there, and the smooth muscle kind of whirls around that blood vessel wall, or makes up the wall of the blood vessel. Right? That's why we say they make up the walls of hollow organs, blood vessels, your esophagus, your stomach, your digestive system, your bladder, a female's uterus. These are all considered hollow organs. They're going to respond to nerve impulses, hormones, and stretch. If you're not sure what we mean about stretch, think about your bladder. How do you know you have to go to the bathroom? Because you feel pressure in your bladder. It's stretched to a point where it's full enough where it's saying, hey, you might want to go to the bathroom or you're going to end up wet in your pants. And that's not a good look for anybody. All right, now we're going to spend some time talking about skeletal muscles, specifically the gross anatomy of skeletal muscles, what we're seeing if we just looked at them with the naked eye. They are highly vascularized, lots and lots of blood vessels, which makes perfect sense. These cells are living. They're going to need lots and lots of oxygen, lots and lots of glucose, lots and lots of waste removed. So we're going to need a really intricate blood vessel system servicing each and every one of our skeletal muscles. We're going to see deep fascia. Fascia is a fancy word for connective tissue. This connective tissue is going to hold muscles together. If you've ever had a massage or gone to a physical therapist and had a deep fascial release, this is what they're talking about. They're manipulating these fascia, these connective tissues, to accommodate changes in the muscle in your body. We're going to look at 3 layers of fascia. We're going to start superficially and work our way deep. We'll look first at the epimysium. The root my means muscle, and the prefix epi is on, upon, or on top of. So we're going to find the epimysium on top of the muscle. Right? And that's exactly what it does. It wraps around, it covers the entire muscle. So the whole biceps brachii, the whole gluteus maximus is going to be covered by this epimysium. Now, if we were to peel the epimysium away, we're going to come upon the perimysium. Peri means around or surrounding. What the perimysium does is break a large number of skeletal muscle fibers or skeletal muscle cells into bundles, into groups. We call these groups fascicles. So a fascicle is simply a group of muscle fibers that are bound together by this perimysium. I have a diagram from your book in a moment, but we're just kind of taking the muscle as a whole in the epimysium. We're breaking it down into sections. Each section is divided from one another by the perimysium. And then each muscle fiber is separated from one another by the endomysium, and endo is within. So the endomysium is going to be within the muscle. So that's going to be our deepest layer. Now, if we look at our diagram, what we have coming off of the bone is the entire muscle. And you'll see that it has a covering, a wrapper called the epimysium. Now, what they've blown out, what they've extended out of that single muscle is one fascicle, one bundle. And the white wrapper around it is called the perimysium. That chunk that we're looking at is a fascicle. Then we blow out a single muscle fiber or muscle cell, and that is surrounded by what we call the endomysium. Right, so these are simply different layers of connective tissue that are named differently because they occur in different areas. They've got a somewhat different job to do. The epimysium, perimysium, and endomysium extend past the muscle, forming the tendon. And if we go back to that last diagram, you'll see that that connective tissue is all merging. The epi, peri, and endomysium is merging at the end of the muscle and acting as an attachment point for the muscle to the bone. An epineurosis is a broad, flat tendon. We're going to find that, I thought I put a photo in here. We're going to find these broad, flat tendons holding the muscles of your head and face, right? You don't feel kind of a rope-like, a rounded tendon. In order to have them work more correctly and be more efficient, the tendon is going to be flattened out. Each skeletal muscle is supplied by an artery, an artery, 1 or 2 veins, and a nerve. again, that goes to the great amount of blood supply necessary in order to keep a muscle in good working order. And you'll remember the excited